Chosen one. There are accomplishments that affect families. There are important events that affect communities. And then there are actions that are so rare, brave, and divinely ordered that they affect an entire country. You did something that no one else around you had the guts, the vision, or the call to do. You were walking on with your faith while others were figuring out the risks. While others were trying to find comfort, you were giving into your purpose. And something you couldn't see moved with you when you did. People were amazed not only by what you did, but also by how you changed as a person. They saw what happened. God saw how they obeyed. They saw the headlines. God saw the hidden nights, the oppression, the loneliness, and the faith that wouldn't die. You should watch this video all the way through because everything in it is to do with what's going on in your life right now. Please leave a comment with your best wishes and the number 99 along with the word Amen. There is strength in agreeing. There is power in making a statement. And when a chosen one talks from faith instead of fear, things change. As you keep watching, know that what happened to you was not by chance. It wasn't just luck. It was in line. Chosen one. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's get started. You did something that no one else in your country has done. Let that sink in. Not out of pride or arrogance, but out of all. This isn't about ego. It's about proof. Proof that God put a plan in you that no one else had. Proof that you were never meant to live by the same rules, the same schedule, or the same expectations as the people around you. There was a difference from the start, but it wasn't always clear or celebrated. It sometimes even made you feel alone. The difference is often the first sign that God has given you a job. There were times when you wondered why your path looked strange, why doors that opened easily for others didn't seem important to you, or why conversations that made others happy left you feeling empty. You felt something bigger, but you couldn't put it into words. That's because what you were carrying had never been seen before in your area. You weren't just asked to be a part of your country's story. You were asked to rewrite a paragraph of it. People were shocked. Some people cheered. Some people doubted. And some people were quiet. Silence is interesting. It can be louder than criticism. People freeze when they can't put you in a box. They hesitate when they can't guess what you'll do. When they see that you've crossed a line they were too scared to cross, they back off and watch. They were shocked by your success, not just because it was impressive. It shocked them because it changed their idea of what was possible. There are unwritten rules, invisible lines, and cultural norms in your country that quietly tell people like you how far they can go. You went over one, and when you crossed it, you didn't just change where you stood. You changed how people saw you. You showed that limits are not laws. You showed that fate isn't limited by where you live. And God smiled at the bravery that got you through in the unseen world. It's important to know that groundbreaking events don't always feel glamorous when they're happening. They feel heavy, holy, and unsure. You weren't walking on a red carpet. You were walking through something that was hard. People were talking. People raised their eyebrows. There were times when you even thought you might have misunderstood the task, that there was something deeper that kept you steady, a knowing, a quiet assurance that you weren't alone in the choice, even if no one else did. God does not make copies. He makes things that are new. And original things often mess up systems that are based on repetition. Your move messed up the repetition. It broke the cycle of this is how it has always been done. That's why people were so shocked. You didn't just do well. You changed the story. When someone realizes they have nothing left to prove and everything to fulfill, they become brave in a certain way. You took that step of courage. It wasn't loud. It wasn't careless. It was done on purpose. It came from a place of change that had been happening inside for years. People saw the public moment, but they didn't see the private work that went into it. They didn't see the nights when you fought with doubt. They didn't see the hard work that made you strong. They didn't see how many times you almost gave up but chose to believe again. When history records firsts, it often turns them into numbers. First to do this, first to break that barrier. But heaven doesn't keep track of numbers in the same way that people do. Heaven keeps track of giving up. Heaven keeps track of faith when things get tough. Heaven keeps track of the choice to move when it would have been easier to stay put. And that's what gives your story strength. It's not just about being the first. It's about being true. A lot of people in your country were taught to wait, watch, and follow the rules, but you walked as if you were supposed to make the footsteps. That difference is what made you different. And it didn't happen all at once. It was grown in silence. Rejection made it stronger. It got better during times when you felt like no one understood you. People were shocked because your breakthrough showed how unsure they were. Not in a mean or mocking way, but in a way that shows the truth. When one person crosses a line, it shows that the line was never really there. and that revelation can make people who chose to stay behind it feel bad. You had a vision that didn't fit with what was going on around you. It didn't meet the usual standards. It went beyond what was normal, and when you did something about it, it sent shockwaves through the world, not just because of the success itself, but because of what it meant. It stood for hope. It stood for growth. It was a new chapter that no one had ever opened before. Being first is very spiritual. It needs a kind of trust that doesn't make sense. It takes being in line with God to keep you going when there is no applause. It takes inner clarity to stay grounded when you don't get outside validation right away. And you went through all of that, not perfectly, not without fear, but you kept going. People remember some people for how well they fit in. Some people are remembered for being different. And then there are the few people who are remembered for completely changing the world. You took a step toward change. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't wait for everyone to agree. You acted when the time felt right to you, even if the crowd was confused. What you did was not only impressive, it was a sign of things to come. It revealed something about who you are that was hidden behind normal labels. It showed that you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to change how the foreground looks. Some people will always try to downplay your success by saying it was just a coincidence. They'll say it was the right time. They will say it was connections. They will say it was by chance. But they know deep down that this was different from the way it usually goes. There was a grace to it, a shield around it, and a series of events that fit together too perfectly to be random. God makes things happen that people can't fully understand. And sometimes, the proof of that orchestration is so strong that even people who don't believe it are quiet. That silence is not a sign of defeat. It is a sign of recognition. As you think about what you did, remember that this isn't the end of the story. Being first doesn't mean getting to the end. It's about finding a door that other people didn't know could be opened. It is about making a way where there was only uncertainty before. It shows that a divine calling isn't limited by culture. You did something that no one else in your country has done. Heaven, on the other hand, celebrates the invisible growth that made it possible, the strength, obedience, and the unshakable faith that your life was meant for more than average results. People were shocked, and you were right. And being in line with God always leads to moments that numbers can't explain. What happened next was even stronger than what happened before. When you are the first to do something in a country, you don't just succeed. You wake up, you start conversations, you bring out hidden dreams in people who never thought someone like you could rise like that. You make people who were happy with things staying the same fight back, and you wake up to a deeper part of yourself that says, this was only the beginning. The air around your name changed. People who used to ignore you were suddenly trying to understand you. The same places that used to ignore you were now getting used to how you affected them. And sometimes it felt like a dream because you remembered who you were before this happened. You remembered the times when your dreams seemed too big for the world around you. You remembered times when just talking about your goals felt like you were breaking a rule that everyone knew but you. But now the proof was clear. Now the impossible had a face, and it was yours. Being the first is a heavy burden that not many people talk about. It's not just applause, it's a duty. You feel like everyone is watching to see what you do next when you cross a line that no one else has. Some people watch with awe. Some people are interested in what they see. Some people watch with quiet hope that you will fail so they can stay comfortable. But you kept going, not because you had to prove anything, but because stopping would have felt like betraying the calling that brought you this far. When a country realizes that one of its own has broken through a ceiling it thought was permanent, it is a sacred moment. It makes everyone rethink things together. It makes people think more deeply. What else could you do if this was possible for you? If you could go beyond the limits they set? What other limits are just illusions? Your success became more than just your own. It became a reflection of the way of thinking of everyone around it. And what makes this even stronger is that you didn't start out in a good place. You didn't get up with a clear path to success. There were problems that would have made most people give up. There were systems that weren't made for people like you to do well in. There were times when it felt like there weren't enough resources and support was far away. But somehow, you moved forward, step by step, door by door, and breakthrough by breakthrough. Not loudly or carelessly, but steadily. God doesn't waste times of getting ready. Every time you had to wait, you were getting stronger. Every no made things clearer. Every time you didn't understand something, it made you more independent. So when the time came to do what no one else had done, you were ready for it. You were stepping into it as an adult. Some people think that stunning the crowd means you were never afraid. That's not right. There were times when your heart raced faster than normal. There were times when moving forward felt like going into the unknown without a map, but having courage doesn't mean not being afraid. Courage is moving forward anyway, and you did move. It wasn't because you suddenly became someone else that people were shocked that day, because the version of you that had been growing in private became public. All of your discipline, vision, refusal to settle, and quiet talks with God when no one else understood what you were going through all came together, create an outcome that could not be ignored. And here's something even more profound. When you become the first, people often get you wrong before they celebrate you. Before there were congratulations, there were whispers. Before there was respect, there were questions. Some people tried to figure you out. Some people tried to downplay what you did. But time has a way of showing the truth, and as the days went by, it became clear that what happened wasn't a fluke. It was satisfaction. You felt it inside, a change. A realization that the walls around your life were never as strong as they seemed. You started to see yourself in a new way, not because you were proud, but because you were aware, knowing that you could do more than you thought you could, knowing that following your calling had bigger effects than you thought it would. Traditions are very important in your country. Expectations are often passed down from one generation to the next, and going against them can feel like leaving safety. But you did it. You chose purpose over being able to predict what would happen. You chose fate over what others thought, and when the result shocked people, it wasn't because you wanted to get attention. It was because you kept your alignment. After the breakthrough, there were times when you sat quietly and thought about everything's messages, the reactions, and the energy. And in those quiet times, you learned something deep. It wasn't just about being first. It was about staying true to what God put in you. Even when it seemed impossible to other people, your move had effects that went beyond news stories and conversations. It got into homes where people felt stuck. It touched people whose dreams were getting smaller to fit their lives. You became proof that being different is not wrong without even trying. Different can be holy, and that proof brings a new level of understanding. Once you break a national barrier, you can't go back to thinking small. You can't act like you're normal after seeing what happens when you align with purpose. Something inside you grows permanently, a sense of confidence that comes from experience, not from ego. People were shocked because they saw what happened, but you know the real truth. You know how many times you had to put faith over fear. You know how many battles you fought in silence before you won. You know that this didn't happen all at once. It was a gradual change. There will always be more to do, more limits to push, and more places to change. But this moment will always be special. It was a turning point in your story. You were becoming before this. After this, you were impossible to deny. And as the days go by, that shocked reaction will fade for everyone else, but not for you. It will remind you of what you can do when obedience meets opportunity, when preparation meets timing, and when vision meets divine orchestration. You did something that no one else in your country has done. That truth is still true. It is getting bigger. After the first shock wore off and the noise died down, something even bigger began to happen. The outside reaction was strong, but the change inside was even stronger. When you are the first person in your country to do something that has never been done before, you don't just change history. You also change who you are, not only how other people see you, but also how you see yourself. There was a time, maybe late at night or early in the morning, when everything was quiet and you could finally breathe. There were no headlines, no conversations, no messages, just you and the heaviness of what had happened. And in that quietness, the realization seemed almost too real. You crossed a line that hadn't been crossed in a long time. You went into a place that scared other people away, and now you couldn't go back to being who you used to be. There is no trophy for being first. It is a change. Something inside you grew permanently. The limits that once seemed real now seemed open to negotiation. The ceilings that used to look strong now looked weak. You realized in a new way that a lot of the things that hold people back aren't walls that can't be moved. They're beliefs that have been passed down. You showed that truth by moving forward when others were afraid to. But what makes your story so special is not just that you succeeded, but that you stayed grounded while you did it. When you are great, you may be tempted to let applause change how you see yourself and to build your identity on being recognized, but you didn't get up to get attention. You got up because something inside you wouldn't let you ignore God's call on your life. That difference is what matters most. When God puts someone in charge, it's usually not for their own glory. It is about divine upheaval. It is about changing a story that has been stuck for too long. It is about setting a new standard that makes systems change. Your big break wasn't a fluke. It was planned. It was planned. It was in line with something bigger than just wanting to do well. Some people wanted to know how you did it. They looked at how you walked. They looked into your past. They looked for a formula, but they forgot something very important. This wasn't just a plan. This was alignment. This was a journey that was shaped by following the rules when no one was looking. There were a lot of decisions that no one could see before the world saw the win. Choices to keep going even when things were moving slowly. Choices to stay disciplined even when there were easier ways to do things. Choices to have faith in the process, even when you couldn't see the whole picture. Those quiet choices set the stage for the moment that shocked everyone. And let's be honest, there were times when you almost talked yourself into making the vision smaller. There were times when it was easier to play it safe, times when it seemed less tiring to featen than to stand out. But every time doubt spoke, something stronger answered. A constant reminder that your life was not meant to follow a normal path. The place you grew up may not have had people who were like you. That's exactly why it's so strong. You were the model. You became the point of reference. When someone asks, has anyone from here ever done this? Your name comes up. That change doesn't just change how things are seen. It also changes what's possible. It's holy when one person's bravery makes new things possible. If you people were moved right away, others quietly fought back. Some people openly praised you. Some people thought about your breakthrough in silence, but everyone felt it, even if they didn't say it. This is because when someone changes what is possible, everyone has to face the truth. Your story made people feel uncomfortable, but you didn't act aggressively or arrogantly. You moved with purpose. You didn't need to tell everyone how great you are. The result said something. The effect spoke. The past spoke. Even now, there may be times when the size of it all surprises you. There are times when you think back on the trip and wonder, did that really happen? But it did, and it happened because of you. This is what makes it special. You didn't wait for things to be perfect. You didn't wait for everyone to agree. You moved when the timing was right for you, even if it didn't look that way from the outside. That kind of strength is rare. A lot of people look to the crowd for comfort. You moved with confidence, not fear. And that belief didn't come from within. It was grown through a relationship with God. There was still help when you felt like no one was watching. There was still a way to go when you weren't sure what to do. You might not have always known what would happen next, but you trusted that you were being led somewhere on purpose. People were shocked by the result, which is why they were shocked. But heaven was answering the trip. There is a distinction. People are impressed by outcomes. God is impressed by journeys. And your journey was full of determination. You could have let the setbacks define you, but you didn't. Some people doubted you, but that doubt didn't define you. There were problems that seemed impossible to solve, but little by little, they lost their power. You now carry something new because you have crossed this line that has never been crossed before. Not pressure, but a new way of looking at things. You know what it's like to break through. You know how it feels to move when other people don't. You know what it's like to trust without seeing proof. You can't lose that knowledge. The country may remember the headline, but you will remember the night, the planning, the fights inside yourself, and the prayers you said when no one else knew what you were going through. Those are the things that make the win important. This is just one part of the story. Being the first doesn't set you apart. It starts a chain reaction. People will follow in your footsteps. People will try things that once seemed impossible, and even if they never say it out loud, your breakthrough will give them strength. That is a legacy. You can't build a legacy by doing things the way they've always been done. It is built by being brave enough to do things that have never been done before. You did something that no one else in your country has done. Not by chance, not by accident, but by being in the right place at the right time, being strong, and being committed to what God put in you. And as this chapter goes on, one thing stays true. You were never meant to be normal. As time went on, the meaning of what you had done grew stronger. It was shock at first, headlines, conversations, and reactions. But when the noise died down, something more lasting stayed: respect, recognition, and an unspoken agreement that a line had been crossed for good. When you are the first to do something in your country, you don't just change the numbers. You also change the rules. What once seemed impossible now has a point of reference. It used to feel like a dream, but now it has proof. Your life showed that limits are often beliefs that are passed down from one generation to the next, and whether they wanted to or not, your breakthrough made them rethink what they thought was impossible. Some people watched you quietly before you succeeded. They saw how determined you were. They saw how disciplined you were, but they didn't fully believe in the outcome. And then, when it happened, they were shocked. They were not just stunned by the achievement. They were stunned by your persistence. because persistence is what separates dreams from history. You didn't wake up one day and suddenly make national history. You built toward it through effort that was invisible to most, through choices that were inconvenient, through moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. Every step was laying a brick in a foundation that no one else could see yet. And here is something profound. When you are called to be first, you often walk alone before you walk recognized. There were seasons when your vision felt isolating, conversations where people politely nodded but internally doubted, environments where your ambition seemed excessive, but you carried on, not because you were trying to compete with anyone, but because something within you refused to shrink. God does not assign groundbreaking missions to those who need constant validation. He shapes those who can withstand silence before applause, and you endured that silence. The day people were stunned was not random. It was the culmination of endurance. It was the visible fruit of invisible faithfulness. Some people wondered how you handled the pressure, how you managed expectations, how you navigated uncertainty without collapsing. What they did not realize is that the pressure had been training you long before the spotlight arrived. The weight that once felt overwhelming became strength. The obstacles that once felt intimidating became stepping stones. You were not just building success. You were building capacity to carry influence, capacity to handle visibility, capacity to remain grounded while standing out. And that capacity is what makes this story powerful, because many people can achieve a moment. Very few can sustain what comes after it. After the shock faded, you continued to move with focus. You did not freeze in celebration. You did not let the applause distract you from purpose. Instead, you carried yourself with a calm confidence that unsettled even more people than the achievement itself, because they expected excitement, they expected ego, they expected dramatic reaction. Instead, they saw steadiness. That steadiness revealed something deeper. It revealed that this was not luck, it was alignment. When God orchestrates elevation, it comes with internal stability. You were not thrown into chaos by success. You were anchored, and that anchor came from the journey you walked long before recognition found you. There were people who once doubted you who now reference you. There were spaces that once ignored you that now make room for you. And while all of that may seem external, it carries internal confirmation, not that you are superior, but that you were obedient to your assignment. Your breakthrough did something subtle but powerful. It disrupted comparison. In environments where everyone measures themselves against one another, your move shifted the scale entirely. You were not competing within the system, you transcended it. And when someone transcends the system, comparison loses its grip. People were stunned because they realized you were operating from a different level of conviction, and conviction is contagious. There are individuals right now who are daring to dream bigger because of what you did. They may never meet you, they may never tell you, but your story is circulating in conversations you are not even present for. Your name is being mentioned as proof that it can be done. That is impact beyond visibility. And yet through it all, you remain aware of the truth. You know the late nights. You know the fear that tried to speak louder than faith. You know the moments when you had to remind yourself why you started. That humility keeps you balanced. Being first does not mean being finished. It means you open something. There are still greater dimensions of your calling unfolding. What stunned the nation was a milestone, not a conclusion, because once you break one ceiling, you realize there are higher skies available, and the same resilience that carried you here will carry you further. Most powerful part of your story is not just that you succeeded, it's that you did not compromise who you were to do it. You did not abandon your values. You did not distort your identity. You remained aligned with the core of who God shaped you to be. That integrity is what sustains elevation. People often assume that national level impact changes a person completely, and in some ways, it does. It expands perspective, increases awareness, it deepens responsibility. But at your core, you are still the same person who once believed quietly before the world believed publicly. That consistency is rare, and that rarity is what made your achievement unforgettable. There are still individuals trying to process how you managed to do what had never been done before. They search for shortcuts, they search for secrets, but the truth is simple. Even if it wasn't easy, you refused to let inherited limitation define your future, and that refusal altered history. When people were stunned, they were reacting to what they saw, but what they could not see was the spiritual architecture beneath it, the timing, the discipline, the alignment, quiet partnership with God that shaped each step. You did something no one else in your country has done, and now the narrative has changed, not because of noise, but because of you. As the months unfolded, the impact of what you had done did not fade. It matured. At first, it was reaction, then it became recognition. But now it is something even more powerful. It is reference. Your achievement is no longer just an event people talk about. It is a point of comparison, a benchmark, a moment in time that divided before and after. There was a version of your country before you crossed that line, and there is a version after. That is what it means to do something no one else has done. The deeper truth is this: your breakthrough did not just elevate you, it expanded imagination. It forced conversations in rooms you have never entered. It shifted perspectives in minds you have never met. Somewhere a young person heard your story and silently thought, if they did it, maybe I can too. And that thought alone is revolutionary because possibility is contagious. What makes your story so powerful is not only the scale of the achievement, but the context. You did not come from a system that was designed for you to succeed at this level. You were not handed a roadmap. You were not surrounded by countless examples proving it could be done. In many ways, you were stepping into unknown territory, with nothing but conviction and faith guiding you, and yet you walked forward anyway. There is a kind of courage emerges when you realize you are no longer trying to fit inside a structure, you are building one. That is what you did. You did not wait for your environment to expand. You expanded within it until it had no choice but to adjust.